day, the first Sunday after Easter, we read at Mass the story of St. Thomas. And it occurred to me, we get so caught up with the terrible event of the crucifixion and then the joy of the resurrection that we don't give much thought to the bit in between, that short period when Jesus was dead and how the apostles felt. On Good Friday night, did anyone sleep? In the story of St. Thomas, we meet him just at that moment when he'd seen Christ die and hadn't seen him alive and didn't know the resurrection. I'll read it to you, listen. It's chapter 20 of St. John's Gospel. In the evening of the same day that they had found the tomb empty, the first day of the week, the doors were closed for fear of the Jews, where the disciples were. Jesus came and stood among them. He said to them, "Peace be with you," and he showed them his hands and his side. And the disciples were filled with joy when they saw the Lord. Now Thomas, who is called the twin, who's one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. And when the disciples said, "We've seen the Lord," he answered, "Unless I see the holes that the nails have made in his hands, and I put my finger into the holes they made, and unless I put my hand into his side, I refuse to believe." A week later, the disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them, and the doors were closed, but Jesus came and stood among them. "Peace be with you," he said. Then he spoke to Thomas. "Put your finger here. Look, here are my hands. Give me your hand. Put it into my side. Doubt no longer, but believe." And Thomas said, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus said to him, "You believe because you can see me. Happy are those who have not seen and yet believe." That reaction of Thomas, they're rather strange words to say, "unless I can see the holes and put my finger in them." And I suspect what's happened is he was so hurt. I can imagine him saying, "I'm never going to love anyone again. I gave that man my heart. I did everything. And look, what if this is God, how God will treat us? What's the use?" And then regretting, I ran away. I could have stopped him, helped him. And people will say, "Well, you couldn't really have done anything." But I ran away. I could have done. I shouldn't have run away. A couple of weeks before this, in the Gospel, it says that when Jesus was going to go and see Lazarus, who was ill, they warned him, "Look, you were nearly killed last time you went there. We can't go back." And Jesus said, "I'm going." It was Thomas who said, "Let's go with him, even if we have to be killed in the process." But now, you know what it's like when you've lost someone. Either someone's died, or you've been rejected. That's something you've said or they've said, and there's hurt, or somebody's gone away. When there's a loss, it can be so overwhelming. I can imagine Thomas saying that, and people trying to console him. "Oh, never mind, it'll be all right." It can't be all right. He's dead. I've seen the corpse. And then they say he's alive. "Oh, don't give me that. Unless I put my hand in the holes in the thing, unless I can touch his side, I don't believe a word you're saying." And stormed off. He's so caught up, he's heartbroken. They call him Doubting Thomas. I think you should call him Heartbroken Thomas. How could he believe when he's so upset? It takes time to get over a hurt like that. Jesus didn't suggest ignoring the hurt. For when Thomas did come to see him and recognize him, he showed him the holes, he showed him the hurt. When Jesus rose from the dead, he didn't get rid of the scars, the holes, the wounds, not in pain now, but something had happened to Jesus. And something had happened to Thomas. He would never be the same man again, because he'd gone through the hurt, almost to the point of not being able to overcome it. When you're hurt like that, you can't ignore it. And it's so overwhelming, you can go both ways. You can just wallow in it and let it take over and never overcome it again. You may have heard people say, I'll never love anyone again. And it's tragic if they follow that. But a person may feel that and then come to terms with the hurt. And the way you do it, you take it to Christ and you hear the lovely thing he said to Thomas. Give me your hand. What a lovely prayer that could be when you're upset. Hear Jesus say to me, give me your hand. You know, when Peter was walking on the water, so full of it, and then he doubted and started sinking, and Jesus held out, said, give me your hand, Peter. Remember that poor man Jairus and his wife, when their daughter, their 12-year-old daughter, had died. He said Jesus came in and took her by the hand, not ignoring the hurt. Jesus said, was it not ordained that Christ should suffer and so enter into his glory? Was it not ordained that Thomas should go through this hurt before he could really appreciate the resurrection? Why do you think Jesus appeared to them when Thomas wasn't there? Couldn't he have waited on an opportunity when Thomas was with the others? I suppose because he knew that Thomas needed time to get through it, to go through the pain, to come out the other side, to accept it. And this is the way we come to Christ, not expecting that there won't be any hurt. But if you are hurt, especially by rejection or a row you've had with someone, or a relationship is broken off, or someone has died, and you're regretting what you should have done or could have helped, and when those thoughts come, turn to Jesus. And perhaps at another time, just recall hurt that you have had, and go to Jesus with it, and show him the hurt, and hear him say, give me your hand. Allow him to hold your hand and to touch the hurt. I sometimes wonder why, when St. John was writing the Gospel, he included this incident. And right just at the end of this incident, he gives the explanation. He said that Jesus worked many signs, did many things which are not recorded. But he says, these are recorded, now listen, that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing this, you may have life in his name. When he says believe, it's not just talking to people who don't believe and then come to the faith, but for us who believe, to deepen our faith. You have to look at what Jesus did in various things, and this is one of the stories. He chose this incident of this man, Thomas, deeply hurt, and coming through the hurt to a wonderful love of Christ. And so in the end, years later, Thomas himself was killed, was put to death because of his love of Christ. Use that prayer, especially when you're hurt. The prayer of Jesus talking to you, to say your name and then say, give me your hand. And the hurt will be healed not by ignoring it, but by allowing it to be treated. And you will never be the same person again. Was it not ordained you should have to suffer to really come to Jesus? God bless you, and let Jesus take your hand.